So a lot of times I'm asked by students, how can I do something where I basically have a session and I want to record, I want to stamp when the session begins and then when it ends. And I want to do that fairly automatic and in a smart manner. It's actually not that difficult to do. And there's several different ways that you could do it. Now, what I mean by a session, I mean, say you have a database that's about working out. You go to a gym. Okay, you're going to have a session at the gym. When you start the session, you want to record when you started. When you finished it, you want to record when it ended. Pretty simple date time stuff. And again, it could apply to a lot of things. It could be like tutorial sessions. If you go over the see the tutorial guys at Geeks, you might want to use something like this to record when you started the session with the tutor and when it completed. Um, and then it could be something like checking out a library book. You know, when did you check it out, and when did you bring it back? Things like that. Obviously, there's some logic in that. You know, that you want to make sure that uh, sign in is before sign out, or sign out is after sign in, whatever way you want to look at that. But you also could constrain it to be that there's a more easy thing, so you don't have to do a lot of typing. You know, you could just press buttons and make it happen. And that's what we'll do in this example. S03-E13 sign in and sign out. So it's a pretty straightforward little thing. Now I've got this in a subject table, the data. Uh, Typically, that's not how this would be. Now it could be. It could be. You could have it in a subject table, the ins and outs, but that'd be kind of rare. I would think. I would think most likely what this would be in a these would be child records to a master subject. So you would have a supplemental relationship, if you will. I think it probably could also be a junction relationship. It could be an injunction relationship of some kind if you're talking about a session that's bringing two subjects together. But most likely, I would think this would be a TSP file that you would have this logic in. But I'm going to show it in a TBL file. And this is an old one, so I actually have one thing I need to fix up here. May as well make this the same as our standard. This isn't going to do anything anyway. This is just cleaning something up. I just realized this is actually kind of an old example that I put together, and before I actually had converged on all my naming conventions correctly. So anyway, this is in here now. And I always see, I said session identifier. I should really say record identifier. That's okay. It's okay to have that. Um, it's just the caption. I'm going to override it anyway. So anyway, let's go on. I'm sorry about that. I didn't really mean to get off track with that. Just something I noticed when I opened it. Anyway, so I have these are the two important fields. I got the DTM session sign in, the daytime field that's for signing in, and a session sign out field. So they're both daytime fields. All right, now let's go in here and I just saved that. Now, if I open it up, if you want to see the records, it typically looks something like this, you know, where I've got the identifier, and I'll actually show an identifier. What the heck? I'll even show the primary key value in this in the form when I do this. It just because it's a unique thing. Maybe that's how I'm going to refer to the sessions. I could format it S00001 or something like that. I could do that. But sign in and sign out. These are the main things I want to do. I want to put some smarts behind this. Now, yeah, I could really go back to this table, and one of the things I could do is create a table validation rule that says that the sign out has to be after the sign in. But what if I could automate this so that it will always be, it will necessarily have to be after the sign in, or it can't be before the sign in, let's say, all right? Is there a way I could do that? And the answer is absolutely. I know that now I won't even need to have a table validation rule because I'll never have to check to see if it's valid, truthfully, because I know this is going to be another way to do it. So I've got a form, and I'm going to open it up so you can see it. All right, so here's my data. Okay, that's in here already. Now let's say I want to put a new one together. Now I really wish I could turn off this one at the bottom that says new, but I can't. And I will, because even if programmatically I could append a record, if I turn that off on the form, if I turn off the capability to see the new record here stationed as if it's new, um, it won't work. Okay, so if you look here though, you can't even open any of these. These are all protected. They're all enabled no, locked yes. All right. The only thing that's enabled here is these buttons with the little clock on it. Okay. And what that little clock does is it stamps the sign out. Well, what about the sign in? We hit sign in new and it'll create a new record down here. Okay, now right here, see if I'm trying to do it here, it's not letting me do anything. And if I try to even hit this button here, it's going to say there is no sign in record. You must click the sign in new button first to create a session record. So let's do that. I'm going to go up here and I'm going to hit sign in new. And you see what it did? It created a new record that has the sign in stamped. So that makes sense. I click this one, I'm starting. Bam, I'm ready to go now. All right. And I would continue to do that. And when I'm finally done, I hit this again. I can't change these, so that's good. I hit the little button here and it stamps it done, and I'm done. I'm done with that record basically. And I can move off of it. I could click off of it so it saves it. But the other thing I could do is maybe I want to start another new session here. Okay, now I start another new session. Same idea, but I could actually start yet another new session. I can go up here and do sign in new. And now I've got two records there at the bottom that are current. Okay. Well, maybe I go on and hey, maybe I actually end this one before this one. That's fine. I could do that. Bam. Maybe I go in here then and I end this one eventually. Bam. It's done. Maybe I realize, oh, I ended this one and I really wasn't done with it yet. Okay, I could click on it and it'll say, that already has a value. Do you really want to update the sign out date time for this session? Oh no, I didn't mean to do that. Maybe it was this one here. Oh yeah, that's the one that's wrong. I really wanted it. Let's sign out now. Okay, I'll say yes, and it updates that value. So a lot smarter than it was. Now, yeah, you could say, well, what if I really wanted this one to be after this one? Now you got to write some more detailed logic where you're going up there and saying, for the record that is in here before me, is my value greater than it, and all that. And you have to do a lookup to actually find this value and all. And that would get to be a little bit more hairy. But I like this. I like this how it's kind of stationed now. Now, what if I did make a mistake here? I did session didn't start at that time. Um, the only way to fix it in right now would be to go into the table and fix it up. So, I probably still want to have a table validation rule that says that this field is after this field, just in case somebody goes into the raw data and starts messing around with it, or you do it. You don't want to you trip on it yourself. But I think this is a good demonstration of how you would want to do one of these. This is probably good enough for most of the ones that I would do. So anyway, I want to show you how I actually built this now. Let's go up to um, looking at it in design view, and you'll see that all these controls right here uh, are visible. Okay, one of the things I actually thought about was make this invisible, and then have a button to pick this one. So if you were starting, maybe you bring up a new session, but you don't start it right away. You could delay it a little bit or anything. And I thought, nah, I'll just stamp it right away as soon as I do that. That makes it a little bit easier. But But when I first did that, I thought, well, I don't want this one to be available. Then I don't want them to hit that, and they haven't even put in the start time yet. And now all my logic would be thrown off. So I was going to have it so this was invisible until they actually put something in there. But then I was afraid they could not, they could wipe it out or something. Of course they couldn't do that if I got it protected and all that. But anyway, this is the way I did it. So anyway, if you come down here though, you'll see that on this one, and this one, they are not enabled and they are locked. So enabled, no. Locked, yes. And if you go further on down, you'll see that there's no tab stop for them either. And in fact, there's not tab stop for the button either. But the button is enabled and it isn't locked. Okay, it just has no tab stop. So really, you don't have a cursor in here at all until anywhere. You just click on the buttons. That's basically it, because there is no overriding the data manually. Anyway, some people have asked me, what if it's locked? How is it changing values? If it's locked, it doesn't allow you to manually change the value. In other words, if this wasn't enabled and it wasn't, I mean, if this was enabled and it was not locked, I could go in here and change the value by hand. But if it's locked, I could still programmatically change it, and that's what a macro does. It programmatically changes this. All right. So let's step through the method. Okay. First of all, I have this on click button. First off, I should say I named both of these controls. So CTB session sign in and CTB session sign out. And this button here, it's on click property. I go down a bit. I open that up. The first thing it does, first off, it does an error trap that in case for some reason it doesn't actually create the record. That should never happen, but just in case I put that in there. And I think that's actually, I got this from one of the wizards that for command buttons, for the next record command button. Okay, so it's going to go to a record and it's going to go to a new record. Okay, now again, if I had set the property, the append record property, for the form to be no, I wouldn't be. This wouldn't work. I would get an error message. Okay, so if you looked at the form itself, its append record property is yes. So it is allowing me to create a new record, and that's why I see that. Unfortunately, I see that star line at the bottom, that I don't really ever use, or I can't ever use. Okay, and then what I do is I set uh, the uh, the control that's on session sign in to be now. That's how I stamp it basically. So I set the value to be now, and then this would only run if there was an error. Okay, and it basically just says there's an error and macro error, and it pops up all this stuff for it. So, and again, I don't think this would ever even really run. Access generated that with the button, but I added this one to stamp the record. Okay, so anyway, that's how we stamp the inbox. Okay, now how does this one work? All right, if I go over, and I don't think there was a, yeah, no, there's an after update. That's right, there's an after update on that one. And on its after update, oh, you know what? That's a holdover. When I was playing with invisibility, I don't need that. Never mind about that. Okay, I'll take that out. I don't need that. That will not activate. I was going to say there shouldn't be anything after update. It used, again, I had this invisible until this was updated, but now it's updated immediately. So I didn't need to do that. In fact, when it's updated through a macro, the after update property doesn't fire even. That's why that didn't do anything when I worked on it before. So I didn't really need that. I took it out. All right. So now we've got this basically. Now the situation would be we've got this stamped and this one has nothing in it. So I got another session. If I click this one again, it would just create another new one and put it and stamp it. So we could have as many new open sessions as we want. But when we finally do close it out, we click this button here. So I'm going to go to that button, and look at its onClick property. Now, this is three if statements that are embedded. The first thing I want to test for is, was the sign in null? All right. If it is, then the else part of this if else and if runs. Okay. Because this is not is null. Okay. So if it really is null, I would get a message box. Okay. I could have said is null here and put the message box up there, and then in the else put this logic down here. But I decided just keep that all together. So uh, if it's null, in other words, if the first one didn't have anything in it, I want to say there is no sign in record. You must click the sign in. Remember when I was uh, clicking, I clicked the button on that star record at the bottom, the append record at the bottom. There was no sign in yet. All right, if I had clicked on that and I stamped it, I would have got a stamp on the sign out, but nothing on the sign in. So I want to make sure that I really have that. Now, there is an alternate way of doing this, and it would be that you make the sign in box is not null. And that way, uh, you click the button, it stamps the other one. You try to save it, it would say, "Oh no, you can't do that. It needs a value there." Well, but now you've actually put data in the second one, and I really don't I really don't think that's a wise idea in the sign out. So, in other words, you could have a sign in null, sign out not null, and it wouldn't allow you to save it because you have sign in. Sign-in's validation rule is not null. But at the same time, I really just should keep them from even putting any data into sign out until there is a sign in. So that's what this does. This checks to see, is the sign in not null? And if it is not null, in other words, it is null, then the else runs, and you get the message box saying there is no sign in recorded. You must click the sign in new button first to create a session record, and basically that's leaves it at that. Okay, you close it down and you go back up here, you go back to your top, you hit the sign in. Now you got a record that's stamped and ready to go. All right, so that's what the first if does. The second if tests to see if the sign out is not null. In other words, I click that button. I'm clicking that button again. Okay, I've already signed out the record, but now I'm clicking the button again. All right, and if the sign in, uh, if it is not null, it means it has a value in it. Then I'm going to ask them, do you really want to? I say the session sign out date time already has a value. Do you really want to update the sign out date time for this session? Okay, now I know you don't know what this means, so I'm going to explain that to you in a second, all right? But, and this is, by the way, remember on T07 and A07, we have on the switchboard, we have a button that closes down our session. And I first prompt, do you really want to do that? This is the same method that I use there. You put what's called a message box function. Okay, remember we have this message box command, all right, but this is a message box function that actually allows you to make a decision, a yes no decision in this case. And whatever button's pressed, this function returns a value, all right? So this is going to be a little bit complicated to explain. So what I want to do here is I want to give you a little bit about where this all comes from. All right. The first parameter of the message box function, what you see up until this comma here, is a string, and you see it's quoted as a string. That is basically the message that appears on the screen. The third parameter is also a string. That is basically the title that you see in the dialog box that pops up from this. What's really of concern to us is this second parameter, this one that says 308, and then the equal to 7. All right. What that means is 308 is a code that basically signifies the design of the box. Okay, whether it's a warning, what kind of buttons are in it, which button's the default button, all that's in there. And I'm going to show you how Microsoft came up with that, okay? The 7 is a code that returns what button was actually pressed. And I think 7 is yes. We'll find out in a second. So what I want to do, I'm going to go out, actually go on Google for this. Okay, I'm going to open up my, I'm sorry, I'm going to go out and search for this. I'll use Bean. I use Bean. Bring up my Bean account, wherever it is. Boy, this is slow. I didn't know that. Let's see. I want to bring up MsgBox access. Okay, the message box function. And this will give me a lot of detail about how this is done. So again, if you want to know about all these different codes and everything, just look this up. Okay, so it's the second parameter. It's called buttons. All right. So again, the first parameter is the prompt, basically what we'll see in the dialog box, and the third one is the title about dialog box. These last two here, don't worry about them. You don't need them unless you want to actually create a help file for this or something like that, or and give it a context number for a help file. You could do that. I've never done that before, but if you want to have detailed help and you want to use the Microsoft Help system, you can actually link it through those. But it's this one right here, the one that says buttons, that we're first concerned about. Buttons. Now it says it's optional. It'll actually give you a 0, but I would never just use the optional. I would just do this. The 0 means okay. You'll have a single button that is okay. 1 would be okay and cancel. You'll get an okay and a cancel button. 2, you get an abort, retry, and ignore. You see all the different kind. Now, 1 through 5 sets up the buttons that you're actually going to have in that dialog box. Okay. The next 4 values are going to say what kind of message is it. Remember how we could have a critical message where it puts an icon in, it has a big red X, or we could have a warning query. Query means a question, so it'd be a big yellow question mark, or a warning message, and that's what we've been using on the Messagebox, commands, macro commands is the warning message, and that comes up with a yellow exclamation point, and then there's one that's information. I forget what the icon is for information, but I think the thing comes up blue or something like that. And there's the code for each one of those. Now I'm going to show you how to deal with those in a second. Okay, there's another set then that says which button is actually the default. Okay, now first, like here where it says first button's default, where you give it its number would be 0. If I had this one here, say it's okay and then cancel, all right, the first button's okay. They're always listed in the order, okay? If I wanted the default to be the second button, I would use this. I would use this code, okay, or that additive. And I'll get in that in a second, okay? But then it would be the second button, so it would be the cancel then. All right. I like using yes, no. I don't like using cancel very often. It makes it sound like something was actually being done. For a decision point, I usually use this one that's yes and no. So first button's yes, second button's no. And then finally, you've got all these things that are about the modality of the box, and whether the text is how the text is aligned and all that. The truth is I never use these. Okay, everything from application modal on down I don't use. Modal again means that it'll open up, the message box will open up, and you have to answer it before you can do anything else. Okay, so I always want that. I always want that to be true. Okay, be careful here. This one that says system modal means that it'll suspend anything that's going on in Windows until that's answered, and I think that's rather dangerous. Okay, it's okay to do it on the application, but don't do it on your entire system. Okay, and then help buttons and all that. Again, I guess maybe someday I might actually specifies a message box window as the foreground window. Wow, that's weird. I wonder what that is. That's new. I'll have to look into some of these newer ones that they've added, but I would again, I would avoid these ones right here. Okay, so how did I get 308? I want it to be yes and no. That's four. I want. I think I had no as being the default on that one. Yeah, right. I had the second button. So I have four, and then well, first off, it's a warning message. 48. So 48 plus 4 is 52. I'm using the second button. So 52 and 256 are 308. And that's it. That's how I did it. Okay. You cannot add these up from each of these segments. If you can only have one in each segment, obviously. So I'd have one here. I'd have one from here, and then I'd have one from here, and I think even down here I just would have one probably, or I don't know. But anyway, these first three at the very least, you cannot take a one value from each one of those, add them up, and get the same value having other ones. Okay, this is actually something that comes from math theory, um, and it's used. This is a little side note, but it's worth knowing. And I think it's one of the more interesting things we come across actually uh, in the semester. Microsoft was really smart to use this. It's actually a code that can be derived mathematically, and basically the theorem is that any values assigned to any subgroup or subset in the overall set, if you take a value out of each subset and add it up, it will always be unique. You'll never have it two different values from the same subsets add up to be a different to be the same value. Okay, so we there's no other way to get 308 than to take 4 and 48 and 256. There's no other way to add that up. There's no other way that you can make that happen, adding these values up. Pretty slick, huh? You know what they call that? They call that a Huffman code. The reason I tell you that is, believe it or not, people think I invented that, and I didn't. Okay, it was some other Professor Dr. Huffman out there. I think his name is Charles Huffman, and every now and then he and I get emails for each other. But no, it is not my code. It is I have no relationship to the man, but he came up with something brilliant, and this isn't the only place I've seen Huffman codes applied. They are applied a lot in electronics, especially in things where you have to have a unique signature for a radio signal. Okay. Now you might say, well, what's so big about that? Think about how many radio signals you have in your life right now. Every remote control that you own has a radio signal on it, right? Every station that's on your TV set, everything that's on your probably on your radios, whatever, have a unique identifier, all right? That no matter how many factors go into determining that signal, it's always going to come out unique. No other signal can have a mix of factors, different factors that would add up to be that same signal. Okay, so that's what Huffman codes do, and they're actually something that we've looked at very closely for things like the blockchain. I know you probably don't know what the blockchain is. I may talk about that at the end of the class here, but in blockchain we want to have pretty much unique identifiers on every what they call contract that the blockchain has. It's basically every record. Uh, and sometimes those codes that are basically the key for each record on a blockchain are derived from different fields that are in the blockchain. Okay, so how do you do that? Well, basically you give a code to each of the fields, a Huffman code to each of the fields, and then when they're added together, they'll add up to something unique no matter what happens. So anyway, those are the kind of things that are out there that are really kind of slick that Microsoft actually took great advantage of. And the place I use it obviously the most is here on this Messagebox function. I know that was a long-winded explanation of that, but I think it's a worthwhile thing. So a lot of you will want to have decision boxes that pop up in your applications, and that's how you do it. Now, where did the 7 come from? Oh, I shouldn't have closed that down. 7 is, I'm sorry, I think it's no. All right. So that means that the no button was pressed. Okay. Remember, it's my second button that was no. The code for no is 7. So if I say the session sign out date and time already has a value, do you really want to sign out from that date? And they click no, I'm just going to stop this whole macro. I'm done. All right. I'm not going to set the sign out because they basically enter no. I didn't want to change that. I want to keep the one that was there already. But if they typed yes, which the code for yes is 6, I'm pretty sure. The code for 6 is, and again, that explanation I just had on the screen. If I had gone down further, it would say what is returned based on the buttons that are pressed. And each of the types of buttons has its own unique code. Okay, it's not like this first one is 6 and the second one is 7. Okay, it's no is 7, yes is 6, or okay I think is 0 or 1, cancel would be 1 or 2. I can't remember offhand what those are, but because I always use yes and no usually on this. So 7 means no. Okay, and that was our default too, by the way. It was our default. Uh, why was it important to have no as default? Because they may just hit enter instead of using their mouse to click on the no button. If I When I go back and I run this, you'll see that no is kind of highlighted, and if I just hit the my enter button, it will select it then. All right. So, and that's what I want. I don't want them to select yes by default, because if they did and they really didn't mean to do it, it's going to change the value and then I can't get it back. All right. So it's smart to use no as your default always on these things, so that you don't make a mistake. Because if they accidentally hit the enter and, oh, I really did want to change it, they can always go back. But once it's changed here, it's changed. All right. So you don't want to do that. The only way to fix it would be to go actually in the raw data and set it back to what it was. And that's if you remember what it was. So anyway, that's how that all works. Isn't that kind of slick? So let's go back and do it again. All right. I didn't really need to save that, but I'm going to close this down. I'm going to go to form mode. And you see, I'm going to say, give me a new one. And I'm going to say, bam. And it goes. Good. Oh, no, I want that. Maybe it's later. I hit it again. Oh, you already stamped that. Do you see how no is highlighted? It's got the blue box around it. That means right now, if I just hit yes, it's just going to leave that there. The only way for me to do that would be actually to click yes, and that is smart to do. So anyway, that's how that all works. And yeah, you could add other logic if you want to make it. If there's any rule that you want to incorporate into it, you could do that. Again, I would probably go back to this table and write. In fact, I will do that. I will go back to this table and write a table validation rule that makes sure that the sign out is after the sign in, either at the same time as the sign in or after it. Of course, you can't click that quick anyway. It's going be a couple seconds in the future anyway, so I could just say greater than if I want to, but I'll make it greater than or equal to. But I will add that, and then I'll put this out on our Blackboard site so that you have the most updated version of it. But anyway, pretty cool. I hope you get, for those of you who are doing things where you are doing like a gym or workout session, or tutoring or library book checkout. That's the other thing. These labels obviously could be switched around to make it check out and check in. You check out a library book and then you check it in later on. You can always just switch the labels around and it'd be usable for that. So it's a nice little thing that if you got the capability, if you have the need, you could go out and use this. Again, I would typically have this in a TSP file that's associated with a main record. So it could be like, maybe these are the sessions that an individual has. So I would have this related to the individual's record. Or maybe it's a check-in, check-out for a book. So I would have this related to a book. That would be in a book table and all that. So this would be the supplemental table then that these would be working on. So anyway, I think it's a neat thing. I hope you get to use it if you can. So we'll call this one done and we'll go on to the next one.